Hi, everyone. Lots of things happening right now that you desperately need to be aware of. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter who we elect in our midterm election or the 2024 election, or who got elected in the 2020 election, or any election that we've had lately for that matter, because right now there are mega corporations who are merging with World Economic Forum and the United Nations, these global organizations, to implement Green New Deal and leftist-style policies, not only here in the United States of America, but all across the globe, which means it doesn't matter what our congressional leaders are doing or if they're Democrat and Republican, because our entire capitalist system is being usurped with leftist policies. And I cannot stress how important the information is that I'm going to share with you in today's broadcast. This is a very serious concern of mine, and one that I have talked about in detail over on Restricted Republic. But before I dive in, check out my sponsor at enjoyliquidgold.com. Now, if you guys have not taken collagen, I really want to encourage you to do that. Anyone that wants to focus on hair, skin, and nails, these kinds of things, this product right here is an amazing product. Right now, you not only get collagen, but you also get turmeric, and it combined together, it just really gives you that what they're calling a liquid gold formula. And the great news is right now you can get it for up to 51% off, and you can get it by going to enjoyliquidgold.com to take advantage of that special offer. But they've got lots of good information on there, but this is it. You can see the package here, but check it out at enjoyliquidgold.com, and you can also get the link in the description box below. All right, so with that, some of this important information that I believe you desperately need to be aware of, and I mean desperately need to be aware of, is the fact that these mega corporations like BlackRock and Coca-Cola and just many, I'm talking over 100 different corporations, and that number is climbing every day, have decided that they will jump on the Sustainable Development Goals, World Economic Forum, United Nations agenda, and they will do that by implementing ESG standards within their organizations. And if you're not familiar with ESG, it is the Environmental and Social Governing Score. Now, these scores are being given to these organizations and companies, or these companies are implementing these scores in their entire organizations. And here's what these scores do. They judge and base your company on a score to see how environmentally friendly, how leftist friendly, how progressive, how socialist, and how Democrat you are. And the more Democrat and left that your company is, the better score that you get. So you can absolutely see how this is a very bad thing for any Republican, conservative, Christian, or libertarian. It's totally pushing a one-sided United Nations Sustainable Development leftist goal. Some of this stuff includes racial and gender equity, which I would kind of say is more of like a reverse racism, but basically they're hiring people based off of the color of their skin rather than the merit of their character and whether or not they can do the job that's required. So if you come in to say one of these organizations that are implementing these ESG scores, then you if you're a white man, you probably have less of a chance of getting hired, because now they're told they have to hire based off of, are you a minority or are you white? Are you male? Are you female? Are you LGBTQ? What are you? And so rather than hiring on merit, they're hiring based off of the alternative, which is complete and utter racism. Not just that, they're also seeing how much of a social justice warrior you are, economic equity. They're pushing and promoting diversity training for their employees and their staff. They're also pushing Green New Deal style policies. How green is your company? And do you have any, say, green advocates in charge of leadership positions at your organization? So again, you can see how this is absolutely devastating for anyone that is a Republican. But this all stems And I've talked about this in detail on restrictedrepublic.com. If you're not there, get there. I can't express that enough. But here we are at the United Nations. And what this ESG score comes from is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And there's 17 of these. And these are goals that they're pushing under the banner of we're making the world safer and more peaceful and more prosperous, when in reality, a lot of these goals do the opposite of what they claim to do. But they sound very beautiful on the surface, right? Everybody wants peace and justice. But a lot of these goals are stemming, a lot of these ESG numbers are stemming from the Sustainable Development Goals, and not just the Sustainable Development Goals at the UN. It's also stemming from your Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum, which is just a forum, if you will, of nothing but your top 1%ers, your millionaires, your billionaires, who, by the way, Klaus Schwab has openly told us that they are the ones who are building the future, right? Just as a reminder, thedailywire.com. Here we have the future is built by us, as in the top 1%. World Economic Forum chairman who spoke of great reset of capital. Now, here's what he said specifically. And it says, quote, "Let's also be clear. The future is not just happening. The future is built by us," Schwab lectured, which means us here in this room. "By a powerful community, as you are here in this room," he continued. "We have the means to improve the state of the world, but two conditions are necessary. The first one is that we act all as stakeholders of large communities so that we serve not only self-interest, but we serve the community. That's what we call stakeholder responsibility. And second, that we collaborate," he added. And this is the reason why you find many opportunities here during the meeting to engage into action and impact initiatives to make progress related to specific issues on the global agenda. In other words, this is not an agenda that has anything to do with building up our country, increasing what's going on in our country, building up the United States of America. It's a global agenda. And these are what these mega corporations are signing onto. In fact, 100 CEOs just penned a letter saying, at the COP27, the annual gathering there that our world leaders and top 1%ers get together and do. But 100 CEOs said, here's what we want. Here's what we're demanding that you do, regardless of who you are, or regardless of the fact of what we think that the people in America say voted some of the Americans in, right? We voted our American leaders in. They're telling our leaders what to do, because we have leaders over there at COP27, but here it is. World Economic Forum, more than 100 CEO climate leaders share an open letter for the world leaders at COP27. What did they say? Here's what they say. "We are ready to work side by side with governments to deliver bold climate action. We encourage all business leaders to set science-based targets to halve global emissions by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050 at the latest." And I want to hit pause right there, because this is a very powerful statement. They state to our leaders at COP27, and by the way, they're leaders from all over the world, and these are 100 corporations, some all over the world, and they're saying, look, we're willing, we are ready, we want to work side by side with you. Since when do we live in a plutocracy where we literally have corporations making demands on our government? And this is what's happening. This is why I'm saying it is getting very increasingly difficult to tell the difference where the private sector starts and the government begins, because they are merging these mega corporations in with our government, and they're deciding the fate of humanity, when we, the people, are supposed to be the ones in charge, not these corporations. This is why I say this is something we really need to focus on. But they go on to say that they are accelerating the transition to net zero requires significant collaboration and shared responsibility between the private and public sector. So they're saying we need to accelerate everything to get us to work together. And then they conclude with all of the different signers. Here's all the different 100 companies that penned this letter. And it's everything from AstraZeneca, you can see here, You can see Bayer here, AG. They've been doing stuff off and on. You can see Coca-Cola being one of those. And I'm just going to kind of go through these so you can see the organizations that are flashed on the screen. H&M here. These are your top 1%. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And then we also have HSBC. ING, we have that. We have Johnson's Controls here. And it just, the list goes on and on and on. Nestle here you have as well. But these are all the organizations that are saying, hey, we get to call the shots. It doesn't matter what you, the people, want. This is what we want. So that leads me to a very important report that I found on theepictimes.com that really details this merger, plutocracy. You can also call it an, I think a plutocracy is a good word, but authoritarian dictatorship as well, where we the people no longer have a voice. But it really paints out this terrifying merging of our future, right? Take a look here. And this is on, again, theepictimes.com. ESG, the merger of state and corporate power. Corporations and government form an alliance for environmental and social activism via the ESG. The article states, more than 500 of the world's largest corporations have signed pledges, so not just the 100, now we're talking about 500, that have signed pledges to support ESG goals across industries, including banking, insurance, asset management, tech, media, energy, manufacturing, and transportation. That pretty much covers everything, by the way. These pledges are signed as part of a membership in the international clubs like Climate Action 100, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, the Net Zero Banking Alliance, the Net Zero Asset Manager Alliance. There's no segment of the American economy that is outside the reach of this movement. From its origins in the United Nations think tank and World Economic Conference rooms, ESG is then passed down to the corporate world via Wall Street and marketed as an investment strategy for companies to follow voluntarily or involuntarily. So this is how they're getting their tentacles into our organizations. And you can see 500 of our world's largest corporations have already signed onto this, right? That includes right here in our good old-fashioned United States. It goes on. BlackRock, head of sustainable investing research, Carol Crozat, explained to investors that while measuring the alliance of investments to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is a complex and evolving task, we believe that their integration is investment decisions can help secure long-term financial performance. Redirecting, and this is key, she said it, redirecting capital toward UN SDGs could offer 12 trillion of market opportunities linked to our long-term social and environmental well-being. In other words, this is redirecting capital into the hands of more leftist, globalist organizations, right? And leaving those who don't want to be on the ESG bandwagon hanging. It goes on. In principle, ESG means that companies look beyond making profits and consider higher political and moral issues like the welfare of the planet. In practice, it means that corporations become political agents for left-wing causes. This concept is also called stakeholder capitalism, which has been endorsed by CEOs across the corporate world. And that's 100% spot on. I agree wholeheartedly. They're making these corporations political agents for left-wing causes. That's what it's all about, period. And they're calling it, quote, stakeholder capitalism. This is why I'm chilled to the core when they start talking about things like that. But it goes on. In accordance with ESG principles, stakeholder-oriented banks like JP Morgan Chase refused to lend oil drilling companies in Alaska. Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, and Major League Baseball fought against voter ID laws in Georgia they claimed were racist. And why did they do that? Well, because it's in accordance with their ESG principles. Isn't that interesting? That voter ID laws somehow can, if you're against those, somehow give you a better ESG score? Yet here we are. The world's largest food companies. Here's some more examples, such as Nestle, the world's largest food companies, such as Kellogg's, General Mills, Nestle, and all of those, and Unilever, encourage and sometimes pressure the hundreds of thousands of farmers who supply them to take up UN-approved farming method called regenerative agriculture. So these organizations are pressuring farmers as well to do these leftist radical things, right? It goes on. Corporations across the board began implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion training for employees, with Coca-Cola even urging employees to be less white. An asset manager, Vanguard, instructed its white male employees to accept uncomfortable criticism about their racist bias toward minorities. United Airlines also set racial and gender quotas for hiring new pilots, and the Bank of America announced that it would provide no down payment mortgages for minorities who wanted to buy a house. So all of this, or all of those, are just examples of how this ESG or these ESG style policies are making their way in to our society. And you know what? It's a big money maker for those on the left, for specifically Democrats. This is why Democrats, unfortunately, are winning and gaining more power than we have ever seen in the past. And here it is here. They go on, a money machine that spans the globe. ESG isn't just an ideology, it's an industry. ESG investment funds and other assets have rapidly grown over the past decade to reach a current $55 trillion worldwide. And their assets are projected to grow $100 trillion by 2025. Now, just to put this into perspective, the entire U.S. GDP is about $21 trillion today. That means the ESG industry is enormous and pervasive. It's lucrative, and it has created a broad network of vested interest consultants, rating agencies, accountants, investment managers, and proxy agents to bring agnostics into the fold. This is huge. Who are the main drivers? Wall Street banks, investment funds are now, and three of the largest, by the way, are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, which control more than $20 trillion in assets. That's pretty huge. And here's just a list of some of those who have pledged to support this particular movement. You can pause right there if you're interested, but you could see it's a lot of banks included in that list. But here's what Elon Musk had to say about ESG, and I agree with him. And here's what he says. I am increasingly convinced that corporate ESG is the devil incarnate. The devil incarnate. That's pretty harsh words, but it really is. It makes all of these companies more powerful by pushing this green agenda and says, hey, you want to invest in us? Here's our green score. But you know, Joe Schmo over there who owns a gun shop's got a very low score. So don't do banking with those more Republican and conservative and libertarian leaning groups. It gives an added boost to leftist Democrat corporations while leaving everybody else behind. And so what happens as a result? They'll get more money in their pocket, these organizations, these groups, and Republicans will get less and less and less and less. It's an unfair system, a complete usurp of what it means to be an American. It's a one-sided politics that are being pushed by these mega corporations who are led by these World Economic Forum and United Nations, which have their own communist style agenda. And they're pushing a plutocracy. Again, it is becoming increasingly difficult to tell the difference or to tell where the private sector ends and the government begins, because it's all becoming people we're not electing are making calls. And you know what? It's starting to get noticed because the good news is right now, our senators and leaders in our states are starting to ban this ESG movement, which, by the way, I forgot to share this article before I get into that. The WallStreetJournal.com, BlackRock is also emerging as Wall Street player in Biden administration. So a lot of this ESG style movement is within the Biden administration, specifically BlackRock employees, former employees or former leaders there are taking money managing roles and other roles through the Biden administration. But the good news is, again, is states are preemptively striking back, pushing against this. But unfortunately, it's only Republican states pushing against it, which means you'll have Democrat states all supporting it and pushing for it. And then Republican states are the only ones pushing against it, not supporting it. So wonder how that's going to play out, or if it even matters anymore. But here it is. We have TennesseeStar.com. States preemptively banning ESG practices pushed by big capital. States across the country are preemptively banning ESG scoring, which some say would lead to a massive consolidation of wealth among the most powerful investment companies in America. By golly, it will. In an attempt to secure vast amounts of wealth and influence over society, corporations, bankers, and investors working closely with key government officials have launched a unified effort to impose ESG standards on most of the industrialized global economy, Justin Hankins at the Heartland Institute said. According to the data provided by that nonprofit, at least 25 states have either banned or are considering banning the practice. You can see this is happening in Florida, Michigan, Tennessee, and some other states are also fighting it as well. Minnesota here, there's some that are having a harder time. But here's just a few of those. This is on Axios, BlackRock, USB, and 348 ESG funds banned in Texas. We also have Utah having enough as well. So that's the good news, is that they are now being banned across the board. So we have some states fighting back, but we have to continue to put pressure on our state legislators to do that. I don't see anything happening at the federal level with results to what's going on. But this merger is really going to put something devastating and horrible in charge of America, and we will never have our freedoms and our rights, because Democrats no longer care about freedom of speech. They want controlled speech, and they want certain things allowed and certain things not allowed. We already know that there is a relationship between the Biden administration and social media. This is coming out by their own administration. Jen Psaki came on and said, yes, we work with Facebook. She openly said that. And we're going to have to see how far the cookie crumbles and goes down. But these are completely illegal practices. Anyhow, wanted to tell you guys about a brand new venture that Justice Knight and myself are starting. If you like food and you're a foodie, we started this website, we'reforkedup.com, completely free. So for those of you who like food, we're going to be like evaluating restaurants, just kind of taking kind of a more humorous approach there. But subscribe to our newsletter. If you click up there, it'll automatically come up when you first go on. But we'reforkedup.com. We've got some great videos that we just put out. And here's our first video, which we did Pravda at the Omni Monte Lucia. But this is a video. We've got a YouTube channel that we just started as well. It's called We're Forked Up. So if you check it out, subscribe to it, you guys can watch our latest video there as well. Anyhow, wanted to tell you guys all about that. I'm excited for it. Great to see it where it goes. But subscribe to the YouTube channel there, or subscribe to the website, or better yet, subscribe to both. Anyhow, I love all of you. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.